I'm not here to sell a book, and I've done a few books. What I really am is part of a research team at Fordham University, which is in New York City. We have a branch at Lincoln Center, and the big branch is in the North Bronx, right across from the Botanical Gardens, and I'm working with a group of people. And I'll talk about a little of the research we did very quickly, and this is research you can get free at any university library. We spent 22 months looking at the impact of e-books and e-readers on the Library of Congress and the Office of the Copyright, which is part of the Library of Congress. We had a research team of 11 people, 22 months. 9 of them were on-time students. Second piece is we out this month, which deals with exports and imports of books in the Library and Book Trade Almanac. Third thing was something I did for Oxford, which is a history. I was originally trained, I have a BA and an MA in history, so I tend to think about history in a certain way when I look at this industry. And the fourth one is the one I'm most proud of, which was a chapter in the 2010 issue of the Library and Book Trade Almanac, and it was cited by Justice Breyer in the Kurtzang case involving John Wiley. And I was reading the opinion of Justice Breyer and said, this is horrible. I mean, I just didn't agree with one word until I got to page 20, and I said, I wrote that sentence. And I told my wife, and they used legal citation, which meant they cited Dave Bogart and the book and my page. And I said, they didn't mention me in my name in the decision, and my wife said, be happy, because it went against the book publishing industry, and I have 4 sons. 3 of them work in the book publishing industry. 2 happen to work at Penguin Random House. So I was very proud of that little piece. At most academic conferences, somebody will get up and dazzle you with unbelievable theories and mathematical formulas that only Albert Einstein could get through. I, on the other hand, will follow Warren Buffett and Peter Lynch, and I do have a copy of Finney and Smith's Crayon in my briefcase. So we're not going to have a lot of theories. Oh yeah, take it off. Okay. All right. Okay, this is probably a little better. 374 years ago, the first book, what I'll do is I'll start and give you some background on structured research materials, and then work the big data, which is essentially unstructured. So 374 years ago, the first book was published in what's now the United States, and it was, of course, the Besson book. It had a print run of about 1,700. It had a 100% sell-through rate and no returns. For those of you that keep count, and I do, there's the return rate for 2012, 2013 in a few of the categories. Notice 22.4% for adult trade, 23.22% for higher education, college textbooks. Essentially, the publishers of the Besson book, which included Richard Mather, the grandfather of Cotton Mather, they knew the answers to the questions that have haunted the book publishing industry for the last 374 years, and that is who, what, when, where, how, and why do people buy books? Answering those questions has been the biggest problem that this business has faced, one of the many, but certainly in many ways the biggest problem for 374 years. What publishers have done for the last 374 years is they relied on what you would call very structured data. They knew that the purpose of a business, this is right out of Kotler, for those of you that teach marketing, the purpose of a business is to satisfy the wants and needs of a customer. If you do that, you have an opportunity, a chance, no guarantee, to make a profit. So we happen to have more access today to usable book marketing material than we've had in the last 374 years, and in 6 months and a year from now we'll have even more. Most of the data that we have today is structured material, numerical data that you can put into columns, that you can put into Excel spreadsheets, that you can analyze. This is from, and I'll show you some examples of structured data. This is all public information. You can get this right from the Department of Commerce website. You can go to the Statistical Abstract of the United States 2014 and get most of what I'm going to show you anyway. Under 13 U.S.C., which is a federal law, in years ending in 2 and 7, publishers have to submit confidential information to the Department of Commerce. It takes them about 2 years to release the data. The 2010 data came out just a few months ago. So while this data is very, very good, it's very slow. You'll notice adult trade was, according to them, 6.637 billion. These are large numbers. I'll give you some other examples. Commerce also releases monthly data on retail sales, and here you can actually see bookstore sales. There's generally, this was as accurate as of last week, there's generally a 2-3 month lag to get the data. You'll notice that March has a P, which is preliminary, which means when they release the April data, they may or may not revise the March data. And by the way, you see January and February, those are subject to revision too. So while this data is very good, it's dated. Here we can actually see from R.R. Bowker, they issue all the ISBNs. This is new title data. You can see in 2010, 4.1 million new books. These categories in total include what you would call traditional and non-traditional. A lot of the non-traditional is self-publishing. As you can see, this was accurate as of, again, last week, and this is subject to some revision because of the asterisk, 1.76 million new books published. So while you can self-publish, and you might make $50,000 a month, the number of people that do that could probably fit into a phone booth on Fifth Avenue in New York City, and there aren't any phone booths left on Fifth Avenue in New York City. More data.
Any quick hypothesis on why 2010 is so huge?
Well, things are in the pipeline, and as you can see, the recession hit. The recession started in the third quarter of 2006, when for the first time the Case-Shiller Housing Index dipped for the first time in over 20 years. We saw that data, it didn't click. Actually, the official start of the recession, if you go to the National Bureau of Economic Research, they actually have a starting date and an ending date. I'm not sure the starting date is accurate, and they're great economists, and I'm not faulting them. And I'm not sure the ending date is accurate either. So I think what happened is there were things in the pipeline, and then people responded because there was a recession and sales dipped.
But also, don't you think it has to do with all the different, these are ISBNs.
These are ISBNs.
2010 is when we started to have lots of different formats, each requiring its own separate ISBN.
Yeah, I know the guy that used to monitor this for Bowker, and when they changed they broadened the categories, and that increased the numbers. He left the company because he felt uncomfortable with that new methodology. I'm not going to fault Bowker,
Right.
but
Yeah.
there may well be things going on. More data. The Romance Writers of America have very, very good data on who buys and reads romance novels. You'll see percentage of people who purchase it, 38% in the South. This is good data. Mean age of a novel buyer print versus ebook, and the reason to buy the story. Again, they release this periodically, generally once a year. It's very good data, but it's timed. There's a lag. Here we can actually see Nielsen. Now, Nielsen does very good work. Obviously, they've been in business since 1923. They're a high-quality, very reputable organization. And what they do is they collect data on what they call a designated market area. A designated market area. This is point-of-sale data. But as you can see, it's broken down into the Northeast. And here's a list, Publishers Weekly, May 19th, just recently. You can actually see, by the way, in Mid-Atlantic, that is Mariano Rivera, the great closer of the New York Yankees, soon to be in the Hall of Fame in 5 years. You can actually see the book by Knight in East North Central and West North Central, if you actually then went to that same issue of PW and you saw the #1 book in each category, you would see that Knight is the only one of that group to appear as a #1 seller. Again, this is designated marketing area. This is what Nielsen uses. Notice New York. That means they're collecting data from Poughkeepsie to Staten Island, from the North Bronx to South New Brunswick. These are very, very large areas. They do not have zip code data for books. They do have zip code data for a program that they have been running for quite some time, but they don't have book data. This happens to be Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. That's 15217. I went to Nielsen, and they'll tell you exactly that people in that zip code generally shop at Banana Republic, read the Wall Street, read the New York Times. They watch the tennis channel. I'm not sure how many people watch the tennis channel. They drive a Mercedes E-Class, how much they spend. So they have data by zip, but they don't have book data by zip code. And what you really want is to go down and drill below the zip code data, down to neighborhoods. So what we have is essentially a B2B business situation. It's been a B2B for a long, long time, and that is a book publisher, Hachette, will sell to a retailer, B&N, Amazon, to a distributor, Ingram, Baker and Taylor, B&T, including Yankee Book Peddler. So contact with the ultimate reader, buyer of the book, or reader of the book, really doesn't exist. And this is a problem. Some companies have developed innovative technologies. Some are selling directly to consumers. Harlequin is a very good example. One of the many reasons why Murdoch and News Corp bought Harlequin was because they publish in 33 foreign languages. They've got global distribution, and they are direct to consumer. Scholastic has also done some work in that space too. So publishers do not have a business to consumer, or sometimes called a direct to consumer business model. Here's the SWOT analysis of the traditional research methodologies that we've been using in this business for decades and decades. Strengths, reliable data. Weaknesses, time lag in getting that data. That time lag could be years, months, days. Nielsen gives you DMA, no zip codes. Sometimes companies rely on data brokers. Last week, the Federal Trade Commission issued a very interesting little report on their concern about data brokers. Some have in-house data operations. In a sense, it's a pool situation. And I use the term swimming pool. In August here, the water evaporates, you put new water in, but the bottom line is it's a relatively growing, but not a significantly growing body of data. Because sometimes they use samples, and sometimes they use DMAs. Opportunities. This industry now has the opportunity to transition from traditional to big data, which I will call the Hudson River approach. Continuous input of data, non-structured data, audio, video, words, social media. Continuous time. An interesting concept that was, of course, at the heart of the famous Black-Scholes model. Black and Scholes reached the point, two brilliant economists, and they couldn't figure out what to do. Merton came in with Ito calculus and gave them continuous time. That's what this industry needs. Continuous time. Not hourly, not quarter hourly, not minute, but continuous. If you have that, you can have collaborative filtering. Think of what Netflix does. You order a Casablanca, and they'll tell you people that order Casablanca also ordered The Big Sleep or High Sierra. And of course, dynamic pricing. Threats. Publishers have a limited amount of access to data. And these publishers could be impacted by this limited amount of data because the people that have it, the distributors and the retailers, they've got continuous time data. They can do predictive analysis. They can have continuous time data. They can do collaborative filtering, and they do dynamic pricing. Last summer, I was talking to a colleague. Her son was taking a marketing course, and I said, this is where you can get the book, at a ShopBot. And I went to the ShopBot, and then I called her and told her, and we had 2 different prices on the same ShopBot for the same book, within literally 2 or 3 minutes. Who would know? Big data, now let me give you some definitions. Big data is non-structured, unstructured data. Audio, video, things from social media. It's continuous stream of information for ongoing discovery and analysis. That's from Lisa Arthur's book, which is quite good. Here's another one from Lisa Arthur. This is data-driven marketing. It's to drive customer engagement, to give the best advice, the most accurate advice, to you, the customer. Here's predictive analysis. This is from Investortopia, and it's the use of statistics, modeling, to determine theoretically future performances. And it's theoretical because it doesn't work. You have 330 million people here in this country alone. So no one model is going to tell you what 330 million people are going to do. And there's collaborative filtering. This is written by 3 people from Amazon. At Amazon.com, we use recommendation algorithms to personalize the online store for each customer. That's what big data can do. It's tough to get into that business. But clearly there are businesses, and you know many of these, that are using big data and using it effectively. Amazon, Google, Netflix, Travelers Insurance, Yahoo, New York City. I know the people that are working on that from New York City. Credit cards. Think of Target. Chase is very good, by the way, in credit card fraud detection. High-frequency trading, supply chains, on and on and on. And I'm not going to go into government issues. Locational, iBeacon. You have a smartphone? Is it on? You have Bluetooth? You download at the ballpark from Major League Ballpark, Major League Baseball. You go to Citi Field in New York City to watch the Yankees play Shea, the Yankees play the Mets. They'll download something and tell you there's a sale on David Wright t-shirts today. iBeacon. Who's behind that? Apple. Google detected the influenza epidemic using search engine analysis of people going to Google asking questions. They even have a box office, a motion picture box office model, which the Hollywood Reporter and Chen, as you can see, Science, Nature, Chen, I should have said it, where she published that. These are really scholarly articles looking at this. Google, this is the top 5 searches of pregnant women on Google. Can I eat shrimp, drink wine, drink coffee, take Tylenol, eat sushi? Do you think Johnson & Johnson would be interested in this? I did. Searched that particular item. I'm not a physician, so I'm not going to go into that, but the results were very, very interesting. So, here's McKinsey. These are the big reasons why they think big data is going to become a big thing if it hasn't already. It's in every industry. It creates value. It'll become the basis for competition. Some sectors are better poised than others. And there's a shortage of big data talent. How big is big data? This was from Wired. There are other sources. Take it for what it's worth. The White House issued a report literally a month ago highlighting the promises and perils of big data. There it is, and it's a very interesting report. Here are certain book publishers that are currently doing big data or quasi-big data. And these are some of the giants. If you Pearson, obviously the largest publisher in the world. If Elsevier is there, you know Wolters Kluwer is not far behind. News Corp, Macmillan, next big book that was publicized pretty extensively last week at Book Expo America. Penguin Random House just launched one a couple of weeks ago, etc. This is a study that was done by information technology people at SUNY Stony Brook in New York City, Long Island. They use what they call algorithms using statistical stylometry, which examines mathematically the use of words. And they found that they were able, using that algorithm, to basically match the actual popularity of books 84% of the time. Notice these were books that were published, not unpublished manuscripts. Slight difference. So here's big data and predictive analytics. Our team believes, and this will be hopefully sent off to a scholarly journal publisher where we don't get paid, obviously, sometime this month. We've looked at this situation. We've looked at the history of this business back to 1640. We believe book publishers of all types need to adopt, that's either start or acquire, a website using big data, predictive analytics, and a direct-to-consumer business model. Why did we reach that conclusion? Well, I decided to not use a quote from a famous marketing expert or a famous industry expert. I went to a literary person and to a physicist. Blanche might have been right. This business has relied on the kindness of strangers for 374 years. Maybe it's time they should control their own fate. And Archimedes, I think I read that on a Cocoa Puff box once, give me a place to stand, and with a lever I will move the world. You know what that place to stand is? It's that on-site web operation, direct to consumer. If they do that, they can move the book publishing world. Now, there are issues. We came to the conclusion that this website should be owned but not operated by any book publisher. Professional managers should run it. No employee of a book publishing company will be involved in any day-to-day operations. Each publisher will determine its own terms and conditions of sale. They can do whatever they want. It will determine its own suggested retail price for every book. I didn't mention rental because it's not such a big deal so far. And this site will collect revenues and remit the revenue to each publisher minus any operational costs, and there'll be swipe costs, there'll be hardware, software, human resources costs. Now, in the past, book publishers have owned bookstores, and they treated other book publishers in a fair way. One book publisher owned the Book of the Month Club, and they had books from all different publishers. And you can see John Tebel's great 4-volume history, or a single volume between covers, history of the book publishing industry, to go into that. And there's, of course, this thing called CourseSmart. CourseSmart was launched in August 2007. It was owned by the Big 5 higher ed college textbook publishers. That's Pearson, Prentice Hall, Cengage Learning, which just came out of bankruptcy, McGraw-Hill, which was just sold last summer for $2.5 billion to Apollo Global, John Wiley, and Macmillan. They own the company. They did not get involved in daily operations. Each publisher set its own terms and conditions. These were book rentals for 6 months. These were PDFs. And unless something happened this morning and I missed it, the Justice Department never really investigated this because hands off. They owned it. It's as if Warren Buffett and Berkshire Hathaway has a major position in Coca-Cola. Warren's not down there telling them what to charge for a case of Cherry Coke, which is his favorite soda, by the way. Hands off. This is the future of this business. You can push aside all of these current controversies if you do this. Now, creating such an online website will have all sorts of questions and concerns. And this is a partial list. The whole list will appear in this article. Can the publishers work together? There's a pretty good question. Can they work together to finance such a website? Will a website give them the answers to who, what, when, where, how, and why? Will it become viable in light of existing major online players? Will it pass the legal scrutiny of the Justice Department or the FTC, they flip-flop, the EU? Now you might say, will the regulatory agencies approve this? July 1st, 2013, the #1 book publisher in the United States, Random House, merged with the #2 book publisher, Penguin. It cleared the Justice Department. It cleared the EU. It cleared regulatory agencies in Canada, Australia, New Zealand, China, and even Bayonne, New Jersey. This will be a complete change in the way they do business. This will require the complete support of a lot of publishers. This will require the courage of publishers. Now, we know since the dawn of time, to make money, you have to take risk. This is a risky endeavor. It's going to require money. And maybe John Wayne was right. Maybe it's time to saddle up. Go home tonight and rent The Searchers, 1956, John Ford, John Wayne, which, as many of us know, is the intellectual foundation of Star Wars. He's Han Solo, and yes, there is a Wookiee. Here are the strengths and weaknesses of this sort of big data approach. You get out of the use of data brokers. You avoid the high cost of each publisher setting up its own big data site. You avoid the use of old, stale, or fragmented consumer data, as good as the data is. The website would control the buy button. It would make sure that every publisher's backlist, front list, and pre-orders are going to be made available to everyone who wants to do those purchases. So those are the strengths. Here are the weaknesses. Maybe it'll be tough to get enough publishers to support financially this site. Maybe the publisher won't have a long-term commitment for the website. And as John Maynard Keynes said, in the long run, we're all dead. Some publishers might not have the expertise to use the big data that would be generated out of this site. Opportunities. You obtain accurate transaction data in continuous real time. Not every second, but every fractions of a second. Calculus is actually rocket science. You can use predictive analytics to make suggestions to customers. You can hopefully minimize, you'll never do away, but hopefully minimize marketing errors. You have an opportunity to increase your gross margins. And you can manage, hopefully, more successfully the value chain. The threats, data breaches, privacy issues. If they set this up, there better not be any data breaches. There may never be another Target or eBay or even the New York Times was hacked. Obviously, there are certain regulations that are coming out of Washington, out of the EU, and elsewhere that would have to conform. This website would have to conform to any of these regulations. There would be, and I put it in quotes, competition from any existing online sites selling books, because this site would now be a competitor. There could be an indifference response from you, and there could be a critical response of media critics, authors, and financial reporters. But there's an upside. You want to make money in this world, you got to take risks. But is there a dark side to this? And here's where the ethical issues come into play. And the answer is yes. Consumer privacy is a major issue, and that's why the FTC is concerned about the data brokers. And security, major issue. There have been investigations in obviously the United States, the EU, think what happened recently to Google. There have been data breaches and major blunders. Here are some of the examples, some interesting articles that have dealt with these issues. The first one dealt with, it's a very famous article, Target sent out information to women that it assumed were pregnant, and it wasn't necessarily the case. The New York Times also had a follow-up, how much does Target really know? And then, of course, the question is, how much does Walgreens, how much does your pharmacy know, and are they sharing that information? And, of course, the Senate expands data privacy investigation, all these things from the Financial Times. This is the 21st century. It's not 1640. Big data and predictive analytics are important marketing tools. Publishers, retailers, everyone wants to make sure that the book publishing industry, whether it's a printed book or a digital book, I don't care. We want to make sure that business stays in business because dictators burn books for obvious reasons. And many book publishers are making plans. The question is, how much time do they have? So I thought I would end with a quote from one of our great poet laureates. It's getting late, early out there, and we better make the change. And of course, Yogi, the great number 8, he's now 88 years old. By the way, his house is for sale for $888,000. He likes the number 8. That's the problem. We've lost the big data fight so far. Maybe it's time to regain it. Thank you. If you have any questions.
Now we have time for a couple of questions. Anyone?
First of all, Al, are you going to make the slides available to people?
The slides are taken from research I've been working on for 3 months, which has been inscribed in a durable manner. That's a big thing if you've ever read 17 USC, the copyright law. All that information will be in. This, by the way, is the Cliff Notes version. We have much more data. It had to fit. So the answer is yes. It'll probably appear in a scholarly journal sometime in the next, who knows when, 6 months, a year.
Okay. Great presentation. So on the consumer privacy issues, are there any reasons why you think that that would be more of a concern to regulatory agencies than current models like Google, Amazon? I mean, they're getting all this stuff, so why would they be more concerned about?
Well, the question is, do you use a credit card? Do you have a loyalty card? They know everything they want to know about you. The data brokers have that information. They're selling that data.
Yes.
The website I'm talking about, they're not going to sell any data. It's just going to be used in order to make the whole experience better for the consumer, make more information available. They're not going to sell it. So yes, I think it's fair to say we're going to see more hearings in Washington, more regulations out of the EU, and probably the good people in Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and elsewhere are also going to address this. This is a big, big issue. It's a real concern.
Amazon knows everything I've bought since 1996 on their site.
eBay has every data
I don't
since
shop on
those
it.
2 guys
But
started.
but my question is, do they sell my data to anybody else? Does Amazon right now? Do you know that?
Write them a letter and ask them.
I just thought.
They probably have a privacy statement.
Uh-huh.
Most companies have a privacy statement. It's usually written by attorneys. It's usually quite long. I would assume the answer is yes, but I couldn't say definitively. Are companies collecting your data and selling it? Absolutely. Google has every search ever done since Sergey and Larry were in that dorm room in Stanford. Hi.
Hi. So you mentioned that in 2009, Google was able to accurately predict where the flu was going to break out. But a couple of years later, their own algorithms had destroyed the accuracy of that predictive analytics. Have we gotten to a point where we can depend on the results of these predictive analytics that come out without them being compromised?
My good friends in economics had all those wonderful models saying we'd never have another recession, depression, or economic slowdown. Didn't quite work out that way. Look, these are models. A model is just a representation of reality. It is not reality. But this is what I do know. In 2011, little more than 1.8 trillion searches were done at Google. When you add all the other social media, this is in 2011, we're talking about trillions of pieces of monetizable information. Is all of that useful? That's where you have to have the right models, and hopefully you pull it out. Are they going to be 100% accurate? Unlikely. But will it have a high degree of accuracy? Probably. But would I bet the mortgage on it? I don't own stock in any company. Everything's handled by TIA Cref, where I clearly have no say in buys and sells. I do that on purpose, by the way. That way I can talk about companies. Anybody have any other questions? Sure.
Just one, if something like this succeeds and alongside Amazon, what's the future of the book retailer, bookstores?
Okay,
If
this
they're
would be
suddenly
online. They would be competing with brick and mortar stores.
Yeah.
They would be competing with anybody else that's selling books. I think the feeling is, and I don't think anybody speaks for the book publishing industry, I think a general feeling is that they want to keep bookstores in business for a lot of different reasons. So I don't think the goal would be to destroy retail stores.
Whatever the goal, wouldn't the result of having two giant retailers online, pretty much?
I'm not so sure that one original online retail is going to survive in this environment.
You don't think Amazon will survive?
I'm not mentioning names. At least not in a public arena.
They don't have to.
I'll be happy to talk to you outside. I tell you what I really think about the things that Mike talked about. But I'm not going to talk publicly because, as you see, I've got two sons that work at this company that deals with one of those companies on a daily basis. Anyone else?
So thanks, Al, for
Thank you.
your insights.